periodically, even expensive guns break. This $4,000 fab arm, for instance, had about 35,000 rounds put through it, and it needed some work. It had blown a piece of wood off the stock. There were a couple other things. So let's get down inside this hole here and look at what it's going to take to replace this chip of wood, and maybe we'll speed this up and answer the question as to why my nose has its own zip code. Down the rabbit hole, boys and girls. Anybody that's ever stripped one of these stocks knows what this urethane looking stuff is. And really what you're paying a guy like me to do is take all of this gack off of this without destroying the stock. Well, it was in here because there were a couple of things going on. This chunk of wood had disappeared because there was a bedding failure. This is a fab arm ELOS, and I'm going to tell you what, it's a great gun. It's a great gun, and we're not complaining about the gun because this failure occurred at 35, almost 40,000 rounds. So we're not complaining about it. We're just going to repair it and get it back out. This is owned by a competitive shooter, and she's actually very good with it. So we stripped all of that plastic off, and then we note down here this dark line, which even looks worse in person. That's oil infill. And this gun is not stored butt down. This gun is actually stored disassembled horizontally in its box, and we still have that. So we got a couple of things we got to fix here. There's a couple of cracks we're looking at back here we'll get into in a little bit. But at the end of the day, the primary recoil surface on this gun should be back here where this pencil is. These should be just hoods, even though they have plastic inserts in them right here in order to, I don't know what they're doing here. But these should just be wings that are covering up the sides of the action. All right, now let me see if I can get in front of the camera. There we go. Those wings insert up into these grooves up here. And all they're supposed to do is cover all this stuff up, not be the primary source of recoil transfer back to your shoulder. So here's what we're gonna do. I got a piece of wood cut here, top, forward. That's telling me that the grain lines up. When it's sitting right there, the grain's gonna line up. Relatively plain straight grain, relatively plain straight grain. When we're done, we'll just have a thin black acroglass line. We'll set that in and we'll let it set. As that's setting, we'll come in and take the entire inside of the action apart. We'll go ahead and strip all the hammers and the springs and everything. We'll take them all out, and we'll prepare this rear back surface back here. We'll prepare this, and we're going to set this flat surface up as the primary recoil area here, and then probably the ends of these two semi-round surfaces right here. It may involve us inletting a piece of steel tubing right where the ferrule on his pencil is into the stock and gluing that in. So when you torque it all up, it draws up here, but it doesn't draw up in front, up in here, and they'll just fit in. So that's the basic idea. And we're gonna go to zero here, do some other things in the shop while the acroglass sets, and then we'll be back. So we glued this block of straight grain on and pushed the acroglass. We just glued it on and waited, and it's a couple hours later. So what we've got here is now a block of wood that looks about right. I kind of matched the grain running straight through the stock, and then the grain running straight through there. So now the trick is going to be to cut this in plan and profile, because it only needs to be a piece of wood that's about this big. But why do I leave this huge block on it? It's square. I can grab it. I can clamp it. In this particular case, I had the vestigial remains of a rubber band holding it on here. You leave it big so you can handle it, and you don't get glue all over your fingers and roll these nasty little glue thumbprints on stuff. So what I'm going to do is just pop out to a bandsaw here and cut this down in here in profile, and then up in the top in plan. Whoops, I got off camera there. We'll cut it in plan right here. So what we'll wind up with is a small sliver, and then we will start rasping, filing, get it out to contour, get it sanded, and get the hell on with this. All right, so I've cut it in profile, and in plan here. You can see I've got it just about down to as wide as it's got to be and down to as thick as it's got to be. Resist the temptation with a bandsaw to whack this piece off right here. You don't want to take this edge off because you work this thing in plan and profile as long as you can, and then it's just a matter of, well, do you have Easter Island sized stones when you go at it while you're cutting this? So you can hear that's ringing a little bit. We're going to pull the focus back. We got to watch we don't crush this thing. We don't want to crush it. You see that caved in a little bit on us? You don't want to crush it. But what we want to do is get rid of this extra wood up here. Now you'll note that on the back side we're flecking off. So you got to watch that you don't tear a chunk where it needed to be. Because when we're all done, we needed a piece of wood about the size of my fingernail. And because the beauty of this is I can just bring my eyeballs down and I'm looking at this on this axis right here, and I'm following the curve as it's coming up. I'm not just freehanding this thing. I'm following the curve as it's coming up. And yeah, you could make the point that there's a lot of excess wood here and that you could possibly come in with a chisel depending upon the grain. So we can just milk this off. Is my hand in the way? No. We can milk this off and see how it's flecking off this way? That means this wood definitely wants to be cut going this way. So yes, now that you're down on top of the vise, ooh boy, that's a nasty crack getting up there. Now that you're down on top of the vise, you can milk off stuff that's not in plan and profile, but it helps to have ridiculously sharp tools. You can see I'm not hanging on to it very tight, because if I come down, you can actually see the walls of the receiver coming in and out here. So this is part of why I love this industrial carpet pad, because it hangs on, and then the non-ferrous vice jaws keep a problem of magnetic stuff on the bench at bay. Magnetic stuff is aggravating. Important safety tip: do not overdrive this chisel and put a big ass gouge back here. Not good. This gun is going to be run in a competition about 5 days from now, 4 days from now. So I do not have a tremendous amount of oopsie daisy time. We'll just milk this down. Okay. Now, I don't want to bring this chisel with this triangular nose on it. If I come in here end grain, it'll start blowing spalls off like this, and eventually one of those spalls will come below the line. We got to cut it off and start over again, and we don't want to do that. This is a Japanese Shinto rasp. These things are amazing if the one you ordered isn't still sitting in a shipping container somewhere in the Pacific. Right there. So now I know I might be a little bit low here, so now I have to stop taking wood off at the front and just keep milking it off at the back. And you see how the glue is popping off the wood here? It's just popping off because we didn't wet this surface. We just kind of put it down on there. And if you don't force this stuff into the fibers, it'll just lay on the top. So there are a lot of, have you ever tried West System epoxies? Have you tried, there's a half a dozen products out there. And again, I'm going to state, I'm not paid by anybody here. I just use the stuff that works. And now we're getting down to a point where we've got just the wood we need. And now the rest of this is just going to be sneaking up on this with a set of files. Rasps now get put away. You go to a fine cut 4-in-1 that has never touched metal. And now we can begin cleaning this up. There is a line, you can see it even in this view, there's a line coming up from the bottom, and this is the line on the cheek block. I do not cut stuff freehand. I know right where that line is. So I'm going to make that line be what I want it to be. Now, when this stock was originally sanded, this got a little fuzzy. So we can actually clean these lines up a little bit and delineate this. You can see that edge is starting to show up now. Let me see if I can get a better lighting angle here. No, I don't think this setup's going to let us do it. Oh, there it is right there. Got it. That's the line I'm trying to continue as I'm cutting up. Because the original break did not come into this line, the original line is hiding down below here. It's hiding down below the wood that we've put on. And our repair line is actually right here. This little bit of glue that's left over is just residuals sitting on the surface of the original stock. And like I said, this gun had about 35,000 rounds put through it before it got to this point. So we're not blaming the people that made the gun. What we are doing is just doing the maintenance. Now, if we did this glue line right, you will start seeing light adjustment here. Hang on, that's all washed out. There it is. This glue line right here will begin to disappear if we do it right. Right now it's still a little bit wide, but if I got this piece flat and this piece was flat and laid on there, this will just look like a piece of grain when this is all over with. Now I gotta have the light up there so I'm out of my way. I'm using the round side because it's only contacting the wood in one small point. If I use the flat side, I'm contacting the wood in a lot of places. But that's really not what I want to do. What I want to be able to do is control where the cut is going. A little bit of residue up there and a little bit of glue that's hanging over because this piece of wood's a little bit too wide this way. So when I cut this on the bandsaw, let me see if I can get this chisel turned up here. Okay, this line right here, this is the actual inside of the stock right there, and that's the inside of our repair piece. So we're a little bit too wide because I want to sneak up on this because I would like the inlet to be nice and tight. The grain kind of runs off a little bit that way, so that tells me that I'll have to cut in this way, and we'll come in and inlet this here in a minute. So there's a little bit of a lip, and we'll sneak up on that. So even with CNC routers, this stock was inlet with a tool that's rotating vertically this way. So the tool's turning like this. And they just came in, cut back, lift up, cut the top, flip it over, come in from the bottom, and then I'm guessing, I don't know how the hell they cut this off square, but this whole thing was designed to be inletted on a machine. So to come back in by hand and do this kind of stock work is kind of dicey. And this is not the first job you pull off. receiver slides up in here like this, and it's already beginning to touch right there. So what I don't want to do, I don't want to have a line, an open gap. So we'll just start sneaking this back a little bit at a time. We'll use our inletting black, we'll spot it in, and then eventually this will come all the way to the rear and touch off back here, and then we can start working on this front face, because we have to make this face look like this, and you just work slowly in really, really, really small chunks, because, you know, even saliva causes cancer, but only swallowed in long periods of time in very small amounts. If you drive this, you will take a piece of this wood and you'll just pop it that way, and it'll pop back like that, and your whole repair is botched. This entire evolution started with a repair that was made to cosmetically fix the gun, but the problem was that it did not structurally fix the gun. That's what we're doing here. Because I'm beginning to open up the inside of the surface here, right over here on the inside, and I want this to slide up. But as you can see right now as we come in, I want you to watch this cheek block. Watch what happens. I don't know if you can see it, but it's moving ever so slightly. And what you don't want to do is leave a residual spring force on this, because it will fail again. So we look at where our glue line is. Our glue line is right here. Redoing the light, hang on. Oh, there it is, that's showing it. Our glue line is right here, but right below it, there's another failure plane right here, and that's actually wood with a little bit of oil in it. So what we'll probably wind up doing is, when we're gonna glass this gun in the back, we'll glass it in the front, and I'll probably put a vertical dog bone down the front end of this thing, down to here. I'll do a vertical dog bone and tie all this together so that there's less of a tendency for it to want to blow apart again. Again, from this angle, you can really see the oil intrusion here. That's not bark, that's not bad wood, that's a spot of oil that ran back through here, and we'll use a little rotten stone, or not rotten stone, I'm sorry, we'll use some whiting, and we'll suck that out before we go to refinish the gun. The important part to remember is, lines should be delineated, but they cannot be sharp, because as area goes to zero for a given amount of force, pressure becomes infinite. In the finish, I don't care how good you are, there'll be a white line there. So we're playing with all of these variables while we're doing this. And I'm just removing a small amount of wood. And what I have here, at the end of this file, I have this inside line here I'm looking at. You just have to believe me, there's a vertical edge in here. And what I'm doing is I am cutting this down while I'm keeping this line vertical. So I have something to guide this by. And I've got to reach in front of you here for a minute and just do one cut. We're getting close. There's a little bit of spring in there we're going to take out. I can't show the spring, but it's still forking open a little bit. But the important thing here, hang on, we're going to do a camera move. Hang on, there's something I want to show you. Can you get up over the top of this, like right up here? All right, fade to here, and you can see the stock spreading on us. So the trick is going to be to get all of this to land just as it tightens up, and we're maintaining the zero gap all the way along this. Because this may be a production line build gun, but these guys were not bad about what they did. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to trip this latch and pop this over so we can actually see this line. And so far I'm doing a pretty good job of keeping it tight. This damage right here, this little blot spot, is a little bit of glue, but I don't want to come down below flush yet. You may have noticed on your new shotgun, all of the wood on the entire gun is a little bit proud, and that's there so that you can do one of these refinishes and get away with it. There we go. No spring. That's what I want right there. Yes, I'm doing it freehand, and yes, I'm doing it without inlet compound, but I got a pretty good idea where I'm trying to go here. So now what's left is, and he'll hold the same position here. That's good, that's good, that's good. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna start cutting this line back until the action lands, and then I'm gonna leave a little bit of air under this because I really don't want this part of the stock in a position where it's absorbing any recoil. I want all the recoil to come back here, and these wings to just go along for the ride and cover up the inside of the action. I'm rolling this chisel like this, and I'm parting this end grain and parting this. And I'm giving this grain pop a place to stop. See how that just popped up like that? And then I can keep cleaving the end of this grain. Now, I'm not pushing down very hard because you're right. If this chisel slips, it's going right through my thumb. And I would prefer to not have that do that. So I'm just cutting this, and it will come in down the end grain, and we'll pop it. Boom, that comes right off, and you keep giving it a stop cut. Now, is it all the way to the back? No, but I'm just trying to get rid of a lot of this stuff so I don't have to contend with it. Okay, a little bit of a... See, now I'm getting into the glue, and the glue doesn't have grains, so it doesn't pop, you see. So you got to be a little bit more careful and resist the temptation to just shove this chisel right through this damn repair and pop it off. How do I know that? All right, here we are, we're done. The action is not sucked all the way back in with the stock bolt, but there is just a slight bit of air draft here, and there's still some excess wood right here, and that's what you want. Try to not sand it all off. We've redelineated this cheek block, which wasn't there. This is cosmetic, and it looks bad on camera, but it's really not. That's cosmetic, that's stain. But if you get this far away from this thing, by the time we stain this, you won't even know that this isn't just some variation in a piece of walnut. And we don't have this brown line here. We have a black line here. So two things I want you beginning guys to know. There's two things you gotta know. Being good at repairing something isn't enough. You gotta know why it broke and make it not break again as best you can. And the second thing is this, you new guys, see this right here? When you get married, don't ever make your wife make coffee. You make coffee. It's one of those luxury things that she'll enjoy. And it even says in the Bible, there's an entire freaking chapter dedicated to the fact that he brews.